You are listening to the Asian Tribune feature podcast, Asian Tribune. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today is Monday, February 9, 2026. And look, usually when we start these conversations, we try to ease you in. We talk about the big picture, maybe a bit of global context. But today we have to go straight to the ground. Literally, we are talking about Chemmani, Jaffna.
It is the story that really defined the headlines for the entirety of last year, 2025. And frankly, even now, in early 2026, it remains one of the most significant unresolved mysteries in Sri Lanka's recent history.
Exactly. We are talking about the Chemmani mass grave excavations. And I want to pause on that word mass for a second, because sometimes, news fatigue sets in and we hear numbers and we just move on. But the stack of reports we have here, from the initial police filings to the Human Rights Commission's dossier, it paints a picture that is, honestly, it's staggering.
Okay.
We are talking about 240 human bodies recovered from a single location.
240. Just let that sink in. To give you a comparison, because context is everything here, think about the Kukuthuruwai excavation. That was a massive story, right?
Oh, huge.
That site yielded 52 bodies. Chemmani has produced nearly 5 times that amount.
In a span of just a few months.
Just a few months.
And that's the part that gets me. This didn't happen over a decade of slow digging. This was an avalanche of discovery that started last year. But here's the thing that makes this a true deep dive. This wasn't supposed to happen. No one went there looking for this.
No, absolutely not. It wasn't a forensic mission. It wasn't a planned excavation initiated by some tribunal. It was a construction project.
So let's rewind the tape to February 20th, 2025. Picture the scene. You've got workers near the Sittapathu Cemetery in Chemmani. They're just doing their job, digging earth for a development project. It's a routine day. Sun is up, machinery is moving, and then the bucket of backhoe brings up something that stops everyone in their tracks.
Bone fragments. And initially, the skepticism kicks in. It's near a cemetery. The immediate assumption might be, okay, we've accidentally encroached on some old marked graves.
Right, which happens. But the density was wrong. The depth was wrong. So credit where it's due, the Jaffna police stepped in immediately. They halted the construction, reported to the magistrate court. That's the system working as it should. But then came the rain.
The weather in early 2025 was relentless. Phase 1 of the excavation started in May, but it was just a washout. By May 17th, they had only found 2 skulls. If the rain hadn't stopped, or if the court had lost interest, the story might have ended right there.
2 skulls near a cemetery, that gets written off.
Exactly.
But it didn't end there. And this is where the story pivots from a construction accident to a national investigation. Phase 2 begins in June, and this is when the heavy hitters arrive.
Right. You have Senior Professor Raj Somadeva, probably the most renowned archaeologist in the country, and Dr. Salia Puranavan, the Judicial Medical Officer from Jaffna Hospital.
And that's when the methodology changes. You move from construction workers to scientists.
And suddenly, the numbers start making sense. Or rather, they start revealing the horror. In early June, in just a few days, the count jumps to 19 bodies.
19 bodies
Yeah.
in a cluster. That is the moment the old cemetery theory effectively dies.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't bury 19 people haphazardly in a standard graveyard.
No.
Precisely. And the public realized it instantly. This is when the civil organizations started gathering at the perimeter. The Northeast Missing Persons Association, led by Yogaraja Kanakaranjani, they weren't just watching, they were protesting. They were asking the question that has haunted the North for decades. Are these our children?
It's a gut-wrenching question. You have these families standing at the yellow tape, watching soil being sifted, hoping for an answer, but terrified of what that answer might be. And as we moved into July and August of 2025, the answers started coming in the form of raw data. And the data was just overwhelming.
It was an exponential curve. Phase 3 ends July 10th with 65 bodies. Phase 4 wraps up in August, and we are at 147.
Wow.
By September 6th, 2025, the logbook closes Phase 5 with 240 individuals.
I want to unpack that surge for a second. Finding 240 bodies in such a concentrated area, that suggests something very specific, doesn't it? This isn't a slow accumulation over 50 years.
No. Archaeologically and forensically, a deposit of that density suggests a mass event or a series of rapid events used to conceal bodies quickly. It implies urgency, and frankly, it implies a cover-up.
And this brings us to the silent witnesses. The bones give us the biology, age, sex, maybe cause of death if there's trauma, but the artifacts, the things found with the bodies, That's where the story becomes incredibly personal. And honestly, reading through the inventory list, it's hard to stay detached.
It is the most difficult part of the dossier. If this were a battlefield grave, you'd expect to find combat boots, dog tags, cyanide capsules, remnants of uniforms.
But that's not what they found.
They found a rubber doll.
A child's toy.
They found a school bag. They found bangles, the small kind, worn by toddlers. And perhaps most damning of all, they found a baby feeding bottle.
Feeding bottle. I mean, let's just pause there. If you are trying to build a narrative that these were combatants, that this was an insurgency situation, a feeding bottle completely shatters that argument.
It destroys it. These are what we call contextual indicators of non-combatant status.
Yeah.
You cannot argue that a person carrying a baby bottle and a rubber doll was an active threat on a battlefield.
Not at all.
These items scream civilian. They suggest families. They suggest children were present in that pit.
There was also a part of a gun barrel found and some clothing remnants. But it's the mix that is so disturbing.
It suggests a chaotic gathering of people, not a regimented military unit.
And this is why legal experts like V.K. Naranjan have been pushing so hard. They want these items displayed, not for sensationalism, but for identification.
Exactly. A mother might not recognize a femur bone, but she will absolutely recognize the specific embroidery on a school bag or the color of a rubber doll. Those objects bridge the gap between forensic evidence and my missing child.
Now, whenever we talk about mass graves in Sri Lanka, the ghost of Mannar comes up. The Sethosa grave, I remember covering that. Everyone thought it was from the conflict era, and then the carbon dating threw a complete curveball.
Right. That was a lesson in scientific caution. The Mannar bones were sent to a lab in Florida, and results dated them to the 1450s to 1650s.
Ancient history.
Ancient history. It took the wind out of the sails of the investigation because it wasn't a modern crime, it was archaeology.
So naturally, people are asking, could Chemmani be the same? Could this be an ancient plague pit or a battle from the colonial era?
It's a valid scientific question, but the evidence we just discussed makes it highly unlikely.
Because of the plastic.
Exactly. Plastic doesn't exist in the 1600s. Rubber dolls don't exist in the 1400s. The presence of synthetic polymers, the school bag, the bottle places these, remains firmly in the modern era. Specifically, the suspicion hovers around the late 1990s.
And Chemmani has a very specific, very dark history with that time period, doesn't it? The late 90s.
It does. We have to talk about the Krishanti Kumaraswamy murder trial. During that case, a convicted soldier, Samartini Rajapaksa, actually went on record. He pointed to this area. He said bodies were buried here. They did a probe back in 1999 and found 15 bodies.
So in a way, we've known, or at least suspected this for over 25 years. We just stopped digging.
We stopped digging. And that is the tragedy. If they had continued in 1999, maybe families wouldn't have had to wait until 2025 for a backhoe to accidentally reopen the wound.
This brings us to the friction. You can't unearth 240 bodies with evidence of children and expect the establishment to just, nod along. The Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, the HRC, stepped in around September 2025, and their report was, it was blistering.
It was. They released their findings on September 3rd, and they didn't use soft language. They explicitly recommended a criminal investigation.
Mm-hmm.
They used the term extrajudicial killings.
For our listeners, let's just clarify that. Extrajudicial means outside the law. Executions. No trial, no judge, just a sentence carried out in the dark.
Correct. And the HRC flagged something else that is deeply concerning for the integrity of the process. They noted that investigators, specifically from the CID, were accused of harassing local officials and the families of the missing.
Harassing them? In what way?
Intimidation. Asking why they were present, pressuring them to leave. The HRC actually had to issue a formal recommendation telling military and police officers to back off.
So they were basically saying, let the science work. Stop hovering.
Pretty much. And it wasn't just the families facing this pressure. The media was targeted too.
Right. I was reading about the journalist Kumanan Kanapathaphile.
Yes, Kumanan is a well-known journalist in the North. He was doing what journalists do, documenting the excavation, taking photos of the site. And for that, he was summoned by the CTID, the Counterterrorism Investigation Division.
Wait, let's just highlight the absurdity of that. He's taking photos of a court-ordered excavation and he gets pulled in by the terrorism division.
That's the intimidation tactic. It's designed to create a chilling effect. The message is, be careful what you report.
But the HRC called it out.
They did. They labeled it a threat to media freedom. And frankly, in the age of digital media, it's a futile strategy. The photos of the artifacts were already out. You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
So the HRC lays out a roadmap. They want a DNA bank established, right?
Yes. Because 240 bodies are just statistics until they are identified. A DNA bank allows living relatives to provide samples so matches can be made. They also push for better technology. In August 2025, the University of Sri Lanka brought in ground-penetrating radar, or GPR.
That's the tech that scans the Earth without digging.
Exactly. It sends radar pulses into the ground and maps the subsurface disturbances. It's crucial because it tells you exactly where to dig next so you don't accidentally destroy evidence with a shovel.
It makes the process surgical rather than exploratory.
Yes.
So we have the bodies, we have the artifacts, we have the technology, and we have the HRC demanding justice. That brings us to right now, today, February 9, 2026. What is happening at the site today?
Well, if you walked up to the site today, you'd see a problem. Water.
The pit is flooded.
Yes. Magistrate S. Lenny Kumar and the expert team inspected it on January 19th, just a few weeks ago. The excavation pit is filled with water, and this is a nightmare for forensics. Water degrades DNA, it shifts bone fragments, it mixes the layers of soil, which makes dating the deposits much, much harder.
So phase 6 is on hold.
For the moment, yes. They physically cannot dig until the water is managed. However, and this is the important however, there is good news.
We could use some.
The funding for the next stage has been approved. Now, anyone who follows state bureaucracy knows that usually waiting for funds is the easiest way to kill an investigation quietly.
You just never sign the check.
Exactly. But here, the money is allocated. That signals that the process is not over. The state is committed, at least on paper, to continuing the work once the water recedes.
That's a critical distinction. It means the door isn't shut, it's just stuck.
Exactly. And compared to the slow pace of justice we usually see, the fact that we are even talking about phase 6 a year later is significant.
So let's synthesize this. We have an accidental discovery that has morphed into a massive forensic challenge. We have evidence that points to a humanitarian disaster involving children. And we have a tug of war between the truth seekers, the scientists, the HRC, the families, and the old habits of intimidation.
It's a test case for the entire country. You know, we talk a lot about reconciliation in Sri Lanka. It's a buzzword. But Chemmani is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Can the judicial system handle the truth of 240 bodies? Can we process the reality of that rubber doll in that school bag?
It's not just about history, is it? It's about the present.
It is an active legal issue. There are hundreds of families in 2026 waking up every morning wondering if the answer to their decades of prayer is lying in a flooded pit in Jaffna. They deserve an answer. And the artifacts prove that this wasn't just a war thing, this was a human thing.
That's the thought I want to leave our listeners with today. The bones tell us how many people are there. The carbon dating, whenever it happens, will tell us when they were put there. But that rubber doll, that feeding bottle, those items ask, who did this and why?
And as phase 6 approaches, we have to hope that science is finally allowed to speak without interruption.
We will be following this closely. We've put the links to the HRC summary and the timeline of the excavation in our show notes if you want to look at the data yourself. It's heavy reading, but it's important.
Definitely take a look.
Comment your thoughts on this podcast. Stay with Asian Tribune.